Well, disappointingly, it's been a very quiet day and I have not seen a single fish in front of me. It's not looking likely at the moment. Well, last night was quiet. Really clearly obvious that I'm in totally the wrong part of the lake. I've only got a little bit more bait to put out. Well, finally we've had a bite. And that was that, it's done me hook link. Let's just hope that he's on there. Yes, he's just kicked, he's on there, he's on there. There he goes. There's carp and then there's this. Christ. Well, you've joined me today in the deep Oxfordshire countryside at a wonderful place called Orchid Lakes. Now, this is an old haunt of mine. I've not fished it probably for about 5 years now, something like that. I was good friends with the owner, Marsh Pratley, and sadly he passed away a few years ago now, and I've not been down here since. So I'm back and I'm really pleased to be back, really feeling it. Lovely vibe, lovely venue, and the fish are a whole lot bigger now than they were 5 or 6 years ago when I used to fish it. So there's a bit of a story behind this trip, to be honest. I hadn't planned on coming down here. I had a lovely trip down on bluebells last weekend, and I got down on a Saturday afternoon and it was really busy, and I ended up dropping on San Martin. Now, San Martin is a lake that I've driven past probably 200 times as I drive through the complex. It's the first lake on the left that you come to. Never fished it, but I've always sort of stopped off, looked at it, and I've always driven straight past and fished swan and kingfisher. But this trip I decided that I was going to have a go on there. Now, might be a little bit to do with the fact that there's a £50 common in there now that's done 56 earlier in the year, but I'd like to say it's just because I wanted to have a go on there. But yeah, the £50 common was definitely the decider. So either way, I've dropped on there, had a really good trip last week, ended up catching 14 fish with 5 of them over £30. So yeah, not bad for a first trip. Felt like I got it sussed. The plan was to go back down there the following week and do a bit of filming, try and catch a few, show you guys how my sort of tactics going into the autumn period had changed compared to the summer. But it didn't stop raining all week, and unfortunately and scarily, the fishery has gone into flood the last couple of days, and the water level's up. The river Nene running through the fishery, it's burst its banks. The lakes are all filled up now, and they're working all round the clock, putting nets out round all the lakes to contain all the fish. And yeah, it's really scary what's happening down there, to be honest. It's really badly affected with the flood. So with the fishery closed a couple of days ago, everyone had to pack up and go home. Luckily everyone was safe. We've had to change plans really, and yeah, we've ended up down on Orchid Lake. So I got down yesterday and had a good walk around. Not too many fish showing. I've ended up bit of a mix-up with swims really. I went to the Alamo swim, seen a few fish show in front of it, really fancied it. Went back to the office to say that I'm going into the Alamo thinking it was free, but actually someone had booked on the app into the Alamo, so I hadn't realised that swim was taken. And by that time, quite a lot of people have turned up and gone round and bucketed other swims. So I've ended up not quite where I want to be, but I've ended up in a swim called the Dead Dog. Now, I have sort of fished it a couple of times before and had a few fish. It's a little bit hit and miss, but the fishing has been really hard in the last week or so. There hasn't been loads of fish out, but for me, I just need to get on some fish, see some fish and try and fish for them. And at the moment, that's not quite happened. I've not seen anything in front of me at the moment, but this morning the wind has switched round and it is pushing up my end the last few hours. So I'm really hopeful that the fish are going to turn up and move down the lake. There's a lot of fish showing in front of the swim to my right, in front of the middles. Apparently they've been there for 4 or 5 days showing now, and I've probably seen about 40-50 fish in front of that swim. But as I said, the wind switched round, it's pushing up my end. I'm really hopeful for tonight that the fish are going to move down here. If they don't, I have got a bit of a backup plan. The guy next door is off tomorrow in the morning, and I've got the option of moving up into that swim for my last 24 hours if nothing happens down here. So I'm trying to keep my options open, but I'm really hopeful that a few fish will turn up here, but it's not looking likely at the moment. But either way, we're going to spend the next day or two just talking through my tactics and how they change going into this autumn period. Whilst the rods are out and we're waiting for something to happen, waiting for a few fish to turn up, I think now is a good time to take a look at the bait I use and how it changes a little bit as we go into the autumn period. I think a lot of things do stay the same for my bait, so the main bulk of it is hemp sweet corn and boilies, but as always, I do much prefer to cook up my own hemp myself. Fresh, to me, there is nothing better than fresh hemp. I mean, the tin stuff is quite good, the jar stuff is quite good, but for me, freshly cooked hemp is the absolute boy. In terms of boilie, the Pro Stim liver has been a firm favourite for mine now for a couple of years. But one thing I do like to change a little bit more as we go into the sort of autumn period, so I like to go down to the smaller baits. Now through the summer I'm using quite a lot of 15s, sometimes I chop them, but I put a lot of whole 15s in. But now I sort of cut back and go down to the 10 millers. And again, I'll still crush up a few, still chop up a few to go into the mix. But it's such a good bait. That bait has got me. I've used Live System for so long, and now the last couple of years moving over to the Pro Stim, I don't think I'll be going back. It's just such a lovely bait, and it works all year round, which is great. Sweet corn, I mean, again, use that all year round. It's so visual, so digestible. Not a lot more to say about it. It's just a key ingredient to put into the mix as well. But as we go into the autumn, one thing that I do like to start looking at adding to the mix is some naturals. So for me, casters are probably the best natural that you can look at adding to the mix. Don't need to put a lot out, just a handful, a few sprinkles in the mix. And I don't know what it is about a caster, but I think the carp just love to come in, suck them up and just crush them all up and pop the casters, because it's so much better than maggots. So where casters or maggots are allowed, I much prefer casters over maggots, and by putting a few handfuls or the odd pint in the mix, definitely sort of gives you a little bit of an edge. In the summer it doesn't really work because most places I fish there's a lot of smaller fish around and they just eat it on the drop or eat it as soon as it hits the bottom. But coming into this time of year, the silverfish, the tench, the bream, the roach, they're less active and not feeding so much, so you can get away with putting the smaller bits in and putting some naturals in as well. In terms of how much do I bait, this session I've started off not putting so much out. I know that the lake isn't fishing too well. I know it's difficult, so I've put out just enough that I feel is just enough to get a bite. And if I do start getting bites, then I'll introduce more. And it's only if I start getting quite a few bites that I will start to build up and put quite a lot of bait in. But for me, there's no point in just tanking loads of bait in, you know, aimlessly when I'm not getting bites. So a couple of kilos tops to start with, just to try and get a bite, and I'll quite happily leave it for 24 hours. In the summer I'd put more in and I'd feel like some of the hemp and some of the sweet corn and some of the crushed boilies may get eaten by bream and tench and some of the silverfish, but this time of year that's not happening, so I can put less bait in knowing he's going to be in my swim for longer, and I don't need to top up until I get a bite. You know, I had sort of hopes that a few fish might rock up down here this evening with this wind. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick to the plan, stay here, do the night, and then in the morning I'm in there for a bit more than 24 hours. Getting there at 9, I've got till like tomorrow late afternoon. Well, disappointingly, it's been a very quiet day. I felt like the wind had switched around this morning and started pushing up my end, and I was praying more than anything that a few fish would rock up, and I have not seen a single fish in front of me. But yeah, they're still showing in the swim to my right in the middles. I've seen quite a few this afternoon, and in fact I've just seen another one show just then, and they've just started to put on a show out in front of there. So the fish haven't moved at all, despite the fact that the wind's just swung round and pushing up the complete opposite end. They have still just sat there. So matey's off next door in the morning, so I'm definitely going to pack up and have a move in the morning and see if I can get on those fish just for one more night, just see if I can nick a bite. That is the plan. But for now, I've had a walk round as well, had a good look round by the islands and that, just to see if I could see any fish anywhere else worth a move. Like, I like to be on my toes. If I'm not catching or not seeing fish, I like to move, but I've not seen anything, so I'll stay put for tonight. The rods are back out on the money, and fingers crossed for tonight. If not, I'm going to be moving next door. Well, last night was quiet, nothing happened at all. I was hoping to see a couple of fish show in the evening or first thing in the morning in front of me, but there's been nothing up this end, so it's really clearly obvious that I'm in totally the wrong part of the lake. In the evening I did hear or see fish in front of the swim to my right, and early hours of this morning I've heard a few more to my right. So the lad next door's off this morning in about an hour's time, so I'm just going to cook some breakfast, have a slow pack up, and I'm definitely going to move up peg. Fingers crossed, gives me 24 hours where hopefully I've got a few fish in front of me, and just see if we can nick a bite. Oh, one just showed over there, look. So, finally we've settled in the new swim. Took a wander up to the middles this morning. The guy was packing up at 9 o'clock. Seen a few fish show first thing in the morning out in front of here, and so it seemed like the right thing to do. Definitely, I'd seen nothing up in front of the Dead Dog where I was fishing. It was absolutely dead up there. So I've moved up here now, and I've not fished this swim for a long time, a number of years. I knew roughly where some spots are, so I've fired a lead out there, had a good lead around, managed to find a nice spot about 25 rod lengths out. Not too big a spot, but nice and hard, nice and clean. And I've decided to put a couple of rods on that, little Northern Special pop-ups. They're always the winner for me, and put a little bit of bait out over the top of that one. But just trying to analyse what's been going on the lake. And the chap in here before me, he had one fish the day he got here, and before that it hadn't done a bite for a week. So there's been fish in front of this swim for a week now, showing by all accounts, and he's done one bite. So I'm sort of thinking bait might not be the one, not sure. So I've got two on that, but I've put one out on a zig to where they were showing. It's sort of like 7 or 8 foot deep out there, so I've gone with a 5-footer. So I just want to be sort of like 2 or 3 foot down, and all I'm going to do is just ping it about and follow the fish if I do see a few. But I've been in here a few hours now, and I think the commotion of casting around has actually spooked the fish off a little bit, because I've now started seeing fish in front of the next swim down. I've seen 5 or 6 now in the last couple of hours, like in the swim to my right. So I'm praying that they haven't all moved, or praying that they come back in front of me, but it's not looking good at the moment. But that's carp fishing, you know. I'm in here, they have been showing here quite regularly. I've hedged my bets a little bit, one on a zig, a couple over a bit of bait over a lovely spot out there. And we'll just have to now be a little bit patient going into the last night and just hope that we can get a bite. One thing I will say is there's a lot of weed about at the moment. It is really, really weedy. The spot I found is lovely, but having a few chucks around the outside of it, the weeds come up, which is probably why the fish are here, because of, you know, anytime you get an abundance of weed, the fish love to be in it. So it's a fish holding feature, so fingers crossed that they will get back here. It has gone a little bit cold now. It's actually switched to a northerly wind, so there's a bit of a chill. It's been raining all day. The weather's just been terrible, but do you know what? I love being out in these conditions. It just feels really carpy. All we need now is a fish. We're coming into evening time now. I've just rechucked the zig just to make sure it hadn't landed in a big thick weed bed and it was sound. So I've rechucked it a little bit to the right because I've seen a few more fish to the right, but generally it's been pretty quiet tonight. Not really sure if I can say I'm confident going into the night, but just got to keep our fingers crossed that the odd fish turns up and we can nick a bite, because that is what we're trying to do, just nick a bite. Well, finally we've had a bite. Seen one fish stick his head out this morning, so I've just sort of rechucked this rod right on top of it, and about an hour later it's tanked off. Now I'm a little bit concerned that it's dived into a big weed bed. I was going to say I haven't felt the fish kick. Just dragging in this huge weed bed and I'm just praying that there's going to be a fish in the middle of it, but I haven't felt it kick for quite a while. But yeah, I fear it might not be on there, but you just never know. Sometimes when they get their heads in the weed, they don't kick anyway, they just come in. But let's just hope that he's on there. Yes, he's just kicked. He's on there, he's on there. Ooh, heart in the mouth stuff now. He's got a big weed bed round him. He's probably, I've got him to about 60 yards out now, and he just keeps nodding his head in that weed. Keep steady pressure on. It's just keep trying to gain line on it. That's all I can do. Oh, it's just weeded solid now. That's so annoying because it's not a million miles out either. It's just painful because you get a load of weed around the lead clip, then you get a load of weed around the fish. If the weed's stuck on the lead clip and the fish comes out of the weed, it just, oh, here he goes, here he goes. He's having a go. This is where he's either going to do the hook link because the weed's in the lead clip, but he's nodding about a bit. He's just had a go at trying to get himself free. Well, at least he's still on there. Come on, let's see if he's just freed himself a little bit. bit of an emergency. We've got the head bailiff down to go out in the boat, see if he can just free it from the weed. We managed to get the fish into about 50 yards out, so he's just going to gently ease it out the weed. He's got a net with him, so if it is completely solid in weed and he can net it, he will. But if not, if it pops out the weed, then I'm going to try and get in from the bank. But Christ, the pressure is on. So I've told Wolsey, the head bailiff, I said to him, no pressure, I've only been waiting 3 days for this bite. So yes, let's see if he can do me proud. It ain't going to end well, you know it. Mate, everything this trip has gone wrong. You just know it ain't going to end well. Have you got it, Wolsey? What's happening? Am I playing a fish? Has he got a fish in there or not? Nah. And that was that. It's done me hook link. The odds were always stacked against that, and the way this trip has gone is no surprise to me that that fish has come off. But oh man, we were close. We were close. We'll ping the rod out and we'll have another go at trying to get one. Oh, if you're going to lose one, it may as well be a small one. Well, thanks for trying anyway, mate. Appreciate it. We've dumped the lead. You know, what more can you do? I've got it into 50 yards out. The fact that he's seen it means it was close. It was close to that. I reckon as he's holding it, it's just shook his head. That's the problem. If you're trying to hand line something in and it just shakes his head, there's no giving it. And with the rod, you've got the cushion. Yeah. But he said it was a mirror, about 23 pounds. So it's not the end of the world, although it is, because we could have done with a fish. But it's a bite. All we can do is get the rod back out and see if we can get another one. So it was another quiet night last night. I actually went to bed fairly early. I think I was asleep by, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock, with the plan of getting up early. So the guy in here before me said that he woke up in the middle of the night, sort of 4 in the morning, and heard a few showing. So I made sure I got up at 4 o'clock this morning and sat up, and I heard absolutely nothing out here. It was dead. The morning was pretty quiet. Then I saw one show to the right of where I was fishing on the bottom, so I wound the zig rod in and I've just chucked a zig exactly where the fish showed, and sort of sat there hoping that that might be enough. And sort of an hour later, the zig rod just pulled up, single bleep, pulled up nice and tight. The bobbin just ticked very slowly forwards, a couple more bleeps, and I was straight onto it. Right from the off, I felt the lead ping off, so that was sort of the first win, and weeded me up. And it was all right actually, because I was getting the weed back and pumping the weed back, which isn't too bad a thing, because if the fish is in the middle of the weed bed and you're dragging it in, quite often they just sit there and you can gain a lot of line on them. And that's exactly what happened. To be honest, I wasn't sure if the fish was on at one point because I hadn't felt it kick. And then all of a sudden I felt a few nods, I've seen a big eruption on the surface, and I knew the fish was on. So I've kept it coming, got all the way to about 50 yards out, and the weed bed got snagged into another weed bed and it all went solid. So we called the bailiff, and he come down and went out with the net, and I thought he had it, to be fair. I thought he'd scooped it up, but it wasn't quite in the net, and it just nodded his head and done the hook link, and it was gone. And that was my chance gone for the morning. But some good news from my mate Archie. He's a few pegs down behind the island, and he's had a bite this morning. He's had a lovely 34 pounder, and that's just, you know, seeing that fish just reminds me of exactly why we come to Orchid. So, you know, I would have loved to have caught a fish like that. So fair play to my mate Archie. He's had a good trip, and he's doing well. So lovely fish there. But I've got that rod back out just after I lost it actually. One showed on the same spot that I'd hooked the fish from. So I've just pinged the rod back out on a zig, and yeah, we haven't got long left, a few more hours, and just fingers crossed for one more bite. Well, we're away again. This time it's the bait rod that's gone. And it's dived straight into a big thick weed bed. Just going to keep the pressure on, see if we can ease him out, get him moving. See, when you get a fish weeded out, just got to try and keep the pressure on and see if you can get him moving. I can feel it ever so slightly coming towards me, but there's a hell of a lot of weed out there. I did have it coming when I've hooked it. There's just so much weed out there. This has found that big weed bed that's just short of the spot. Just keep him coming while he's coming. Oh, that weed. Well, we've got him coming now. He's about 30 yards out. To be fair, it doesn't feel very big, but do you know what? Doesn't matter how big it is, as long as he goes in the back of the net, that's all that matters at this moment in time. It's been a long old slog, this trip. A lot of depression, a lot of hard work, a lot of being patient. And to lose one not long ago is absolutely gutter. But to get a bite on the bait, it's mint. No pressure on your arch. Come on. There he goes. Oh, well done, mate. Oh, what a boy. Christ. Oh, that is the hardest earned fish I've ever caught, I think. Boy, I needed that.
Oh my goodness me.
What is it? Linear?
One of the best looking fish I've ever seen in my life.
Well, there's carp and then there's this. Christ, it has been a long old slog this trip trying to get a bite. We lost one this morning. We finally had a bite off the bait, and look at this one. It's not the biggest fish in the lake, but by God, it is one of the best looking fish in the lake, without a doubt. In fact, it's one of the best looking carp I've caught in a long, long time. And whilst we're doing this, I could just see Archie along the way. He's just netted a fish as well. Arch, do you want to bring that fish over as well? Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good trip. It's been really hard. I've lost one earlier. Finally got one on the bait, and it looks like it's starting to happen because Archie's just got a fish as well. So, more than happy with this one. There we go. That is exactly what Orchid is all about. I've had a mint session with my mate Archie. You've had a few beautiful fish. I've managed to chip in with one myself, and yeah, not got long left now, so gonna have a slow pack down, and yeah, just really appreciate these fish that we've caught. It's been a mega trip. Look at that, side by side.